Hey, what's going on, guys? It's the Martial Arts Mindset. I'm your host, Luis Martinez. Uh, Sensei Omar couldn't make it tonight. You said, I think he was cooking something or something like that. He's always eating something. But no, he has some family stuff to take care of. So my guest this evening has already been on the show. And we're going to bring him back on. Such an awesome guest to have, Mr. Allie Alberigo. How are you?
Hi,
How you doing tonight?
I'm great. I just got done. I rushed home. Thank you for allowing me a few more extra minutes so I could eat some dinner. But yesterday I just came off of running a event for our martial art tournament circuit. We had an awards banquet with like 450 people there. So if
Wow.
I'm a little hoarse, it's because I was on the mic for a good portion of the night. And then tonight I taught for 4 hours, from like 4 to 7:40, and then I jumped in my car and shot out so I could get home, eat dinner real quick, and be ready to go with you.
I appreciate that. I'm as you can hear, I'm hoarse as well, but I've been like this for the past 4 months.
Yeah,
So
a lot of people, right? They had some sort of congestion and infection or cold, and a lot of people losing their voice.
I think mine's from allergies. Ever since I got the new dog that I was just telling you about in the
Right.
green room, I've had this voice. So
Ah,
yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. Right. Wow. Well, I hope you get better. I hope it doesn't bother you forever.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I don't even remember what I sound like anymore.
Yeah, normally, right? I
Yeah.
know. I know the feeling. So
So
cool. So let's, whenever you're ready, I'm open. I'm an open book. Just ask me any questions. I'll try to answer them logically and sensically and so on.
yeah, so basically, just want to say first that for anybody that's listening to this who might not know who you are, you're the founder of LI Ninjutsu Centers. Um, you know, you have one school now, but you had many schools at one
Yes.
point.
Yes.
So why don't you give a little bit of background about
Yeah.
yourself?
I think if there's anything that I could say that, well, there's a lot of stuff that I could feel proud about, but one of the things is that we've been open going on 34 years this year. So that's
Wow.
a long time, So like there are many dojos out there that are opening up now. Everywhere you go around the corner, there's a new school popping up. To stand the test of time, like that book that's called From Good to Great, it talks about statistically how long businesses last. And like, businesses last 5 years. Like if 100 businesses start, like 50% of them will only last 5 years. And then 50% of that will only last to 10 years, right? And then it goes down even more. So it's highly unlikely for most businesses. I mean, even if you think about it in our day and age, right? Like
Hmm.
franchises or restaurant chains, not a lot of them last for that long. They're
Yeah.
not around forever. So I feel proud that we're able to stay open, stay relevant, keep on teaching, and run a thriving martial arts school.
Yeah. And you're also teaching ninjutsu. You're not
Yeah.
teaching taekwondo. You're not teaching, karate.
Yeah. Or
Uh,
BJJ or.
right. So you've done this for 34 years teaching ninjutsu.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know, and that's interesting. I don't know if a lot of people understand that reference, right? But um, our art is a very esoteric art. Um, by the way, back in the day, it was much easier because everyone knew of ninjutsu and ninja because
Right.
that was the craze. '80s, the '90s, movies, Hollywood, TV shows about ninja. I mean, they're still in stuff, right? Right, but not really as commonly as they used to be.
Hmm.
Every magazine cover every other month was a ninjutsu guy, whether it be Stephen Hayes or someone else, or so ninjutsu for me has a built-in brand. Like it's been branded over millions of dollars in time. But nowadays, the majority, you probably have a same in your school, like a majority of the parents that bring their kids, they don't really have an idea of what any art is. They
No.
don't You know, you're convenient, you're local, you do kicking, you do that karate stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, the parents like, we're going to karate today. And I tell them to tell their parents, the kids to say, I'm not going to karate. And the parents go, oh no, you're going, you're getting in the car. No, no, dad, I do ninjutsu. I don't do karate, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's what hasn't been easy, but it's been fruitful because, you know, at my peak in the New York schools, I had about 1,250 students.
Wow.
Then I had schools outside of the country, Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, Michigan, upstate New York, Brewster, New York, Bermuda. Then I had 6 on Long Island. So I had what? That's 11 total schools that were affiliated and part of my dojo and the system that I taught and how I taught and so on.
How did you this is not a question I actually
Yeah.
have for you, but how did you manage everything? Because when I opened my second school,
Yeah.
I found trying to be at both places was almost impossible. So
Right.
I knew that, but I was trying to kind of like teach my staff, like,
Right.
hey, this is what you need to do to make things run smoothly.
Yeah.
And that was even hard. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So
It
how
wasn't easy, and but I am really good at managing people. I was really good at developing systems that worked in all the different locations. There were one system, and even like for example, LI Ninjutsu Centers of Costa Rica. Like I wish I could pull the picture out. You can see the sign LI Ninjutsu Centers. It's in Costa Rica in Spanish,
wow.
and it was pretty awesome, right? And it, but that wasn't as easy to do because a lot of those school owners from other countries they weren't in it as if I owned the school as much, you know, like they didn't buy into it, every one of them, and work so hard to follow every system, although they were quite successful if they followed my lead. But that's probably one of the reasons why I started to decide to sell off or close down or limit my schools and interaction because my daughter was born. I started to realize that I wasn't seeing her as much as I would like because even though and it's funny because people, I haven't seen you that much. And I'm going like, yeah, but I'm only here 1 day a week, but I'm at 6 different schools in Long Island. And then I'm
Yeah.
traveling on every single weekend to different countries. And I would
Wow.
sometimes go 4 and 5 times a year to Costa Rica, Bermuda, Puerto Rico. And I'm always was on the road. Fortunately, at one point I was single. Maybe that's probably one of the reasons why I became single. But yeah, and I was able to travel, so it wasn't as bad. But I missed my daughter, and I didn't want her to grow up without a dad being present.
Yeah.
So I started to say, you know what, I'm going to focus entirely on her. And I have to tell you, like a lot of the students, the higher ranks, they didn't like it. They wanted me. They wanted me to be there. They didn't like that I had a family and I wanted to live my life a little too. Like they didn't step up and say, hey, let me make your life easier.
Right.
Let me be more compassionate and understanding and help you so that you could live a normal life as well. So I had to make that hard decision and say, like, look, I'm going to close this one down or let you run this one or unaffiliate myself with like the Costa Rica dojo and so on. And by the way, there was some politics involved with a lot of that when I was in the organization that I was in too. There's a lot of pressure on me because of that.
Right. Well, I guess going into my next question, the way you as an instructor,
Yeah.
the way you trained your kids and adults versus now, was it way different? Like let's say 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, it's not necessarily how I train them now, although I will tell you this. People have changed. The mindsets have changed. Nowadays, the parenting styles have changed.
Mhm.
Like all of those factors are, in my opinion, bad for the kids, bad for the adults, you know, just the mindset of it at all. But let's go back even further. I had a different mindset when I first started, like in the 90s and 91. I mean, I was like brutal on my students. Like I was like, you know, hardcore. People call it old school, but I was brutal. And my mindset was like, hey, if they can't handle it, they're not meant to be in my school. And then I think I've told this story before with you, maybe even, but I had a friend of mine who ran a very successful jujitsu school. He came and visited. At that time, I was in a 600 square foot facility that included my office, my floor, and my bathrooms.
Wow.
I mean, literally a shoebox, right? And after he watched my class, my guys are brutal. I'm throwing them on the hardwood floor. We had no mats. We're like fighting. He's like, wow, that was impressive. He goes, you got about good 15, 20 serious people. He goes, but what about all those other people that can't handle that and that they're quitting because you hurt them or they couldn't handle that type of abuse or that kind of hardcore training? He goes, you just either one, you scared them off to martial arts forever, or two, they're not going to come to your school. They're going to find somewhere else. And I kind of got really pissed off. He's my buddy, but I got in my car at the time. I had a Mazda B2000 pickup truck because I used to landscape as well. I jumped in the truck. I'm shifting through the gears. I'm riding home and I'm working myself up. And then I don't know what happened, but at one moment before I even got home, I had this epiphany. And I said, you know what? He makes total sense. Like as a ninja, I had to teach in a way that I could motivate them to stay longer and camouflage what I was doing so that later on I could go hardcore and go harder and not lose them in the beginning, like build up rapport, get them so that they could handle it. And the minute that happened, and I learned the systems to make that happen, my school started to flourish. And I went from like 30 students to like 300 students.
Wow.
And it's interesting, right? Like I always tell people I coach martial arts, right? Like one thing is interesting where falling, right? There are fears in life, right? We fear public speaking, we fear heights, we fear drowning, we fear of falling, right? We have these major fears in our life. And I was like putting him through all of that stuff in the first class. I'm making them, they had to hear key eyes and yelling and loud noises, right? The fear of like loud noises. Then I was teaching them how to fall, but not really teaching them. They were getting thrown and I'd show them, but they didn't know and they were scared about that, right? And then, they had to key eye and count and speak out, the fear of public speaking. So I was hitting like 4 of their major fears within the first class. And I was wondering why people felt apprehensive and were afraid.
Right.
So then I realized, like, look, I could get them to fall, but I have to take it slow. It's like in my school now, they're not at beginner level and white belt level. They're not allowed to be thrown. They get taken down slowly, but we don't like throw them hardcore, right?
Yep.
So that they have to learn the ukemi, how to fall properly before they start taking falls seriously. Like one time I had a guy who was a cop instructor for the police department self-defense in Manhattan. Trained with me for like 2 months. My rule was no falling, no falling. Begged me. Literally after like 3 or 4 weeks, he broke me down. I'm a teacher. I teach falling. I know what I'm doing. All right, buddy, take a fall. And first fall, boom, gets thrown, breaks his collarbone and his elbow.
Oh, man.
No, I'm okay. I'm like, no, dude, you better go to the hospital. Turns out it was both broken. Never saw him ever again. Like 1, he was embarrassed. Number 2, he was injured. And 3, my fault because I shouldn't have never let him break me down. He didn't know how to fall. He thought he did, but he didn't. And you know how it is. You guys take falls all the time. You either do it right or you do it wrong.
Yep.
But you got to learn to work yourself up to being a good uke, learning how to do ukemi, and being capable of doing that. And most of my students, you ask me the question, like, how are they different? Like back then, I could throw people and they would fall, flip in the air. We call it catching air, like an aerial ukemi. And nowadays, everyone's afraid. Everyone's so nervous. And I'm like, and I, as an owner, I'm also a little nervous. Like, I don't want, like, we used to dive roll over stuff, dive roll through stuff. We do all this crazy stuff. And now when they're doing it, I'm cringing, like, hope they don't get hurt. I'm saying in my head, I hope they don't get injured. Like, and, but at the same, and many people did get injured and came back and some of them stopped, but I had to be really careful. And I worry nowadays if people are capable.
Yeah. The reason I asked that question, because I remember when I was training as a kid, we didn't have mats, right? We had wooden floor.
Yeah.
We got thrown on the wooden floor. Punishments were, knuckle push-ups on the wooden floor, or it was if my teacher wanted to make the push-ups more severe. He had these bags filled with like, I think they were like marbles or
Yeah,
something.
ball bearings or something.
Yeah, something like that. And we had to do push-ups,
Yeah,
knuckle push-ups on
yeah.
these bags, right? And then sometimes, like if we got into our stance or whatever, like a horse stance,
Mhm.
and we didn't do it correctly, he would hit us in the
Yeah,
legs
yeah,
with the staff, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
like, and that's you just took it. You know what I mean? That was
Yeah, I was that guy that was doing the hitting, and I also took it too. My teacher, Shion Felix Vasquez, who I trained with in American Ninjutsu, he was brutal. Like, I mean, I had my nose broken 3 or 4 times, being his uke and partner. My elbow doesn't go much straighter. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but that's about as straight as that elbow goes from being hit in the elbow and cranked into a wrist
Mhm.
lock. But I got abused. We would fall on the hard floor, but the floor was tile, so it had grout in between it. So there was always these edges. We had one mat, and the mat had like, it was an 8x10 mat, but it had like about a 3-inch area that still had the foam cushion in it. So you'd see us diving for that one area where the cushion was, to try to get at least a little bit of protection. But I have to tell you, I would not have traded, even though my body and my injuries and still being older now. I'll be 60 next month, and I feel the injuries from all of that hardcore training. So there is a balance to not take that abuse and put yourself through that, to be able to learn and be as good and deal with the mindset and the mentality of training that hard without the injuries. I think that we're better at that now than ever before with
Mhm.
science and that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't trade it for a minute. Like, when I tell those stories to my students, they don't believe me. They're like, oh yeah, okay. Like,
Yeah,
in their head, they're like, that's almost impossible in their mind that that's
yeah.
how it went. But then they'll see some videos that I have on YouTube, and me getting hit with a pipe, and getting thrown and blasted in the throat with the strike, and like, and just standing right back up and bouncing back and doing it again, like, but that's how we trained.
Do you believe that if we I'm not saying like hitting kids is the answer or hitting students is the answer, but do you believe if we were a little bit if we were allowed to be harder on our students,
Yeah.
or a little bit harder, they would grow into better people?
Absolutely. I think that the world is soft. I'm really sad about the direction that our society is going. And by the way, it's not just the United States; it's
No,
everywhere.
yeah, it's everywhere.
Like,
Yeah.
look at it like this: like, there are so many predators out there that are hurting people that are just mentally not. They don't care.
Yeah.
They'll hurt anyone. And then there are people that think they could defend themselves because they took some martial art classes or got a black belt. And
Or they're carrying mace
yeah,
or
yeah, or
something, you
something
know what I
like
mean?
that. Yeah, they think they have
Yeah.
a weapon of some sort, that are clueless as far as what it takes to actually survive. But the answer to your question is this: I think that um, we have to find a select group of people, like maybe our process of finding students has to be a little bit more rigid, and we have to find parents that have the same desire to have students, their kids, that go through training to make themselves better, right? Like, so that they should, like, I have parents all the time that say, listen, you could be hard on my student. I have one dad, he's a little over the top, and he'll say, yeah, I don't mind, you're old school, you could kick him around the dojo, you could throw him, you could beat him up. I'm going like, look, that would be great if we did that, but then other people would see it, and those people would be scared off, right?
Yeah.
Like, parents are overprotective, and by the way, they should be, because there's a lot of psychopaths out there, right? There are a lot of abusive instructors that used to really harm people. They would do terrible things, like, there are a lot of old people, not old people, but in general, that, sleeping with their younger students and doing things that are just unheard of. So I get why parents are so cautious, and they should watch out. But I
Yeah.
think once they've trusted you and learned to trust you, and by the way, this is also hard because you trust someone for so much, and then they do something bad, right? So, like, you always have to have your guard up. But like I'll give you an example. One time I had a student, The parent called me up. She was livid. This is about 30 years ago. And she was mad. Like, what did you do to my son, Jay? He's black and blue from head to toe. And I'm like, whoa, 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 hold on. Ma'am, we didn't even touch each other. We did kata for the last 2 days. We haven't even grabbed on. So I said, you better take Jay to the hospital and find out what's going on. The poor kid turned out that he had leukemia. He died about eight months later.
Jesus.
Sad story, but that's like, that was common ground where people's necks were all torn up because we were doing gi chokes. We used to do manriki, the rope, you know what it is, but for the people listening, it's like a chain with two weighted ends. But we used to use the metal one, and I had to stop using it because I'd get more calls from wives because it would leave like these hickey marks on people's necks. And they're like, call my sensei. He'll tell you that I was in the class and it was from the manriki, right? Like, it was so funny that happened. But anyway, long story short, we went to the rope one because there was less visible damage. Yeah. But that's how it was back then. Like, we were tearing people up. We were scaring people. Oh, here, what do we have? Frank Burgess, my student from Bermuda. We still have a dojo that's affiliated with us in Bermuda.
Nice.
Yeah, you're left with the few that have the thing that makes a student a teacher after time put in. You're left with a few students, I assume, right? That still make it worthwhile for the teacher to put their time in.
Yeah,
it's true. And he runs a dojo in Bermuda, and it's hard. People come, they go, they want to be dedicated, they quit, he gets new people in. It's frustrating. And this is a different country, and it's still the same as we have in the US.
Yeah, it's crazy. What's the best excuse you've ever heard from a parent or adult about quitting?
Oh, there's so many, but it's endless, and it's so frustrating, dude. I have to tell you, it's like, we as teachers, and I don't know if there are any of parents, because I put this up on my dojo page and I put it up on my personal page, so I hope that parents are listening. But we as teachers, we're different than a school teacher. They have 6 months or 8 months with your kid, and then that kid graduates and moves to a different grade. They never see them again. They might have connected with them over 6 or 8 months, but we have them for years, year after year after year after year. I mean, I have kids in my school that have been with me for 8-10 years, right? And you develop a personal relationship with them. You end up caring for them. They're kind of like your children in a way, right?
Right.
And then one day they quit. Like, literally, okay, Johnny's quitting. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's going for his black belt in a year. Yeah. He doesn't want to do it anymore. And you're going to let him stop? Like, you're going to let that happen? Yeah, he's bored, or, he wants to try other things and so on. And, there's nothing you could do. And then we lose that it's like a breakup in a way.
Yeah.
Right. You come home and your wife
take it personal.
Oh, definitely. And it's hard not to.
Yeah.
I've gotten better at it, so I don't take it as personal for as long. But it hurts. It really, and parents don't realize how much it hurts. But you know what, though, too, in their defense, what can they do? Their kid wants to quit. They're not going to be, I have to be loyal to Shion. He's been teaching them for 8 years, so we got to stay in touch. Like, they just disappear. Boom, out.
So the thing that makes me so angry about that, because you just mentioned it, and it's usually around brown belt.
Yeah.
So I don't know about your school, but in my school, students, the most students quit either right after white,
Right.
They try it out for a few months and they realize it's not for them, whatever. The next portion of students that quit the most is right before black.
Right.
And it's like, you're letting them quit because it's hard.
Right.
Like, are you going to just let them quit when college gets hard, when high school gets hard, when they have to go get a job, when they have to work 40 hours a week?
It's hard. Like, I agree with you. Like, I've used all those logics to talk to people, right? And I think, though, that it's like a relationship, right, where people are going through the relationship. It's fantastic in the beginning. Then it kind of gets a little rocky towards whatever. And then people make a decision to get out or stay in. The ones that decide to get out, they've already decided. And no matter what you tell them, they're not going to hear it. They're out. They're out of the relationship. So that happens a lot with parents. Like they don't want, there's a few factors that come into play. Number one is the parent doesn't want to pay to fight with their kid to force them to do something that the kid's torturing the parents over and not wanting to go.
Right.
And I've seen it. Kids could be great at that, like where they make your life difficult and they're just, I'm not going to argue and fight with a kid because I know it's good for him, but I'm not going to make my life miserable just to get him to do something else. So a lot of times parents give up. And then they will justify, hey, listen, they'll do something else. This is not their only thing. This is not their only thing in life. They'll move on. They'll survive. They'll do well. And then they quit. However, though, the ones that stay are profoundly changed. Like their lives are changed forever. Like I have kids that, are now grown up that they still like, they don't train. They haven't trained in a long time, but they still come back to me or write me or tell me how the martial arts has changed their lives. Like I have a guy who just wrote me a testimonial and he was my first student and him and his brother. And that was in 1991. It's funny. His name was Tomcat when he was a little kid, Tomcat, then he got a little older and it was Tommy. Then he got a little older. It was Thomas. Then it was Tom. Then it became Officer Ogburn. He was a police officer. Now he's a retired cop. That's how long ago this was. He's grown up, was a police officer, retired, and did his 20 years on the job, like crazy, right? Like I was around most part of his life. He just wrote me a testimonial on how the martial arts changed his life. It impacted everything he did in his job, safety wise, as a police officer, as a husband, as a dad now. That's why we do what we do. And it's sad because parents don't realize how much they're missing out on, what potential they have at their fingertips. If they would only be stronger, stay with it, force their kids to go. My mom, look, if I said to my mom, she was the disciplinarian, my dad was a cop, my mom was the European mom. I go, Ma, I don't want to go to karate today or jujitsu, what it was, judo. She'd go, okay, I'll see you down in the car in 5 minutes and have your gi on and your belt ready. Like that was her answer. It wasn't like, okay, take a break, buddy. I know you're tired. I had a mom the other day write me a note. I'm like still blown away by it. The kid is 2.5, 3 years old, just about 3. She's worried that her kid's anxiety coming to the dojo, her kid's anxiety is through the roof. I go, anxiety? He's 3 years old. He doesn't even know what anxiety is. Like you can't put a label on what he is feeling. He's feeling nervous. He's feeling uncomfortable. It's new. He's a kid. He doesn't get it. Like throw him in there, let him train. We'll work it. We're not like we're yelling at him and hitting him and abusing him. We'll work with him to get him through it all. But she's already putting that word anxiety on him. So she doesn't want him to have anxiety. Let me tell you, this kid's going to grow up with major anxiety when he gets older because this is what they've bred him to be.
Right. Yeah. It's like, you need to, especially with kids, you need to, if there's any advice I could give a parent, my best kids at my school come from parents that push their kids over the edge. Yep. I'm not saying throw them in the deep end of the pool.
Right. Or abusive, but they just
push them over that line a little bit.
Right.
If you push them over that line a little bit, they're going to get used to they're going to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's why I turned out the way I did.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to quit things when I was a kid. I started things, I had to finish them.
Yeah.
So after, I got my black belt, then I could have told my parents, hey, I want to quit. Right. They would have been like, okay.
Right.
Because that's kind of like a big milestone, right?
Yeah.
But luckily I didn't, right? I still kept going.
Yeah.
But same thing with baseball. I could have said after we won our first championship, hey, I want to quit now. I accomplished something.
Right.
But I didn't, I kept going. But there were times I wanted to quit baseball. There was times I wanted to quit football. My parents didn't let me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it made me into the person I am today. I don't really quit anything. I give everything 110%.
Yeah.
To the point where I'll stop doing something if there's no um, I guess, if I'm like forced to stop,
Right,
you know what I
right.
mean? Like
Yeah,
if there's a way I can keep going,
yeah.
I'm gonna keep going. You
Well,
know what I mean?
that's one here's one of the traits, like if any parents are listening or students listening, one of the best traits you could ever have from the martial arts or learn from the martial arts is to have that grit to not quit,
Right.
right? The grit to not quit, like where, things become difficult, quit. Things are you're bored, quit. If you don't like what your teacher said to you, quit. Like, but no, like maybe you should stick with it. You know how many times in my head I go, I really would love to quit when I trained with my teacher Sheehan Vasquez because he broke my nose, or I got a beating that I walked out of there with an injury, but it's made me who I am today. And let's take the physical side out. Now, mentally, I can overcome anything, a problem at my business or a frustration with an employee or something that happened in my life. I don't just fold up and give up, right? Because I've been taught all the years and over the years how to not stop, never
Yeah.
ever quit, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's something that I wish that parents would do more of nowadays than ever before.
And I think also parents, when you decide to do when you decide to put your kid in martial arts, be invested in what they're doing.
Right.
You know, I can't tell you how many times, well, little Johnny's not getting it, or um, he just doesn't want to do it anymore after only doing it for 3 weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
You're- But they're not really invested in what he's doing. And what I
Right.
mean invested is like, are you like, practicing at home? Are you following through with the homework we're giving them?
Right, right.
Are you making
Exactly.
sure he's doing it? You know, um, are you bringing him in on time? Are you
Mhm.
bringing him in proper uniform?
Right. Fully prepared with their gear, whatever you need.
Yeah, I can't tell
And
you how many times we have to tell parents like, "Hey, they can't be dressed like that."
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
they look like crap,
Yeah.
They're not wearing. Sometimes we'll have kids come in that are not even wearing a uniform.
Right, right. Yeah.
And when we tell them, they're like shocked that we tell them, "Hey, he
Yeah.
needs to be in
Well, you know
uniform."
what? Well, you know what though? I have to tell you, like I have a friend and he has a dojo in the city. I taught at his dojo one night, and I think it was like a teen class, like maybe like, youth, like 9 to like 14-year-olds. And this older elderly grandmother comes walking up with the kid and said he's here for class. And on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they wore black uniforms. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, they wore blue uniforms. So he was in his blue uniform on a black uniform day.
Mhm.
So he says to her, "I'm sorry, Grandma, he can't come into class." She's like, "I just walked 4 blocks to get here." An older woman.
Yeah.
He goes, "Yeah, I understand." He goes, "I'm really sorry. He can't come to class. So if you'd like to go home and not bring him back, that's fine." And that was it. End of conversation. So next thing I know, the grandmother's right back through the door with the right color uniform. Like she walked all the way back, changed them, and came back. And I'm like, wow, holding people to a standard
Yeah.
is a great lesson. It's like I always say to my parents, like then and they'll, I'm sorry he doesn't have his uniform. Well, I'm sorry, Mom, he can't train without it. And we go the other way. We'll loan them. We have a loaner uniform that they can wear, right? Because we don't want to piss people off. But at the same time, it's their responsibility. One time I went to Japan with a group of people, and the guy who ran the group forgot his uniform. So he shows up to Tanimura Sensei's dojo with the orange shirt and shorts. And Sensei goes, "I don't know," like in his voice, he goes, "I don't understand. You not have your uniform." He goes, "Yeah, I know. I forgot to pack it." And he's like, "Okay, go to Tokyo and buy a new one."
Right.
He said, and so it took him a day. He had to travel to Tokyo. He ended up paying like $350 for a gi. But Sensei wasn't going to let him train without a uniform just because he
Right.
forgot it. So
Right.
like we have to be a little bit more stringent with our rules and say, "Hey, listen, this is the way it is." And I tell my people, like I tell them ahead of time, I'm a stickler when it comes to the uniform.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go easy on you guys. I want them to be prepared. Sometimes when they're supposed to bring a hanbo and they don't, I'll loan them one. But I'm like, when are you going to step up and be responsible?
Right.
You know?
In private schools, they have to wear uniforms.
Exactly.
If you go to a Christian school or
Yeah.
something like that, they're
Catholic
not
school.
allowed to come in their regular clothes.
No,
They
and
all get sent home.
Yep. They don't get to do class. They don't get a loaner. They don't get a pass. That's
Right.
it. You don't have your uniform. Don't come.
Yeah. So like, I don't understand why it should work
Yeah.
differently.
Well,
It's like,
I think because people believe that they're cutting you a check and they're writing the tuition check for the month that they've done their job. And you said it before, it's hard. You got to get a buy-in from the parents. And trust me, I get it. It's like, having a child is not easy, and having multiple children is really not easy, and have multiple children in multiple activities. It's like these parents live their lives just trying to keep their kids happy. And it's hard for them. The uniforms in the laundry, they're rushing out to do this. And I feel bad for them, but you were right though. They have to put the time in. They have to be more involved. They have to look at the schedule. And then sometimes parents will say, oh, it's their responsibility. I go, but they're not living up to their responsibility, obviously. So now you have to step in as a parent and teach them how to live up to their responsibility. Check their equipment before they come in the door. Check when you leave. Make sure they take their uniform off and fold it and put it in a specific spot. Like, so many things, little things that they could do that will change their child's life. And even for adults, look, we're talking about children, but I have adults that are that irresponsible. They don't come prepared. I could see under their uniform, there's a Jet shirt versus a Dojo shirt. And I'm like, I could see it, dude. I could see it, live up to what you're supposed to. That's your responsibility.
So this is me live opening up to you and everybody else.
Okay.
To ask for your advice, because you've been doing this a lot longer than me.
Yeah.
So I have a few students that are at the brown belt level.
Right.
So their next belt is black.
Okay.
But they are taking forever to get to black because they're scared, or they might not want to do the work. I've tried to talk to them. Feel like, I have this one guy, he's a great guy, don't get me wrong. Great. One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. But he's just not motivated.
Yeah.
And it's like, I literally asked him in class, I'm like, what are we doing here? You've been a brown belt for probably over a year now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What are we doing? And he just doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
What can I do to get these students motivated? Or do they just need to want it for themselves?
Well, they absolutely need to want it for themselves, right? There's no other way around it. Like I always say to my kids or my adults, I'm like, I can't unzip your skin and jump into your skin and zip it up and be what you need to be. You got to follow my lead and want it. Like when I was coming up in the martial arts as a young kid all the way through, I worked hard. I would videotape myself. It was crazy. I'd be in my teacher, my Filipino martial art teacher, God rest his soul, Chuhan Chris Sayak of the Sayak fighting system. He lived with me for like a year in my house. And he would wake me up in the middle of the night, 2 a.m, and he'd be shooting bow and arrows at me and make me climb up trees, have me climb a ladder. Then he'd let go and the ladder would fall and I'd have to roll. It was like having a crazy Mr. Miyagi in my house with me. I love the memories from him. I wish he was around. I love him. I miss him. But I wanted that kind of training. Like there was something about me that just got it. And you probably have a few people the same way that they just get it, right?
Yeah.
That student. Then you have a handful of others that are just average, everyday people that maybe one day it's going to click and they're going to turn up the heat and become that person, or they're going to go through life mediocre, right? Like I have a sign in my dojo that says mastery, not mediocrity. Right. Like, because that's where some people, they just do the bare minimum to get minimum to get by.
Well, yeah, it's like, and it takes 4 or 5 years to get a black belt.
Mm-hmm.
My school, probably same as yours, maybe a little longer.
We're 5 to 7 in our school.
So why do all the work for 4 or 5 years? And then when you get to, your goal, which is obviously black, because if it wasn't black belt, why do it, that long? why just not care anymore?
Well, here's another question though, right? Well, we have to find out, even us as school owners, we have to know our why, right? Our why for everybody in life. What is your why, right? Why do we exist? What makes us happy? What motivates us? Why do we get up every morning excited or bored or depressed, right? So some people don't have a why. And that's one thing probably with those students you should establish. Like, what is it that you want out of the martial arts? Forget the black belt, because some of them can't even see it in their future. Like, they don't even have the vision, right? Or they're afraid of that responsibility of being a black belt. So we have to first find out what they're doing it for. Ask them that and work with them on finding out that why. Like, why do you want to be a black belt? I want to learn how to defend myself. Okay, let's make sure we focus on that. You know, why do you want to be a black belt? I want to be more confident. I want to be able to walk without fear. That's where we have to find out the why that motivates and gets them to do what they do. And that's a big deal. I mean, I've had black belts I promoted 178 black belts in my day.
Wow.
Some of them, they made it through and then they quit. They get their black belt and they quit because that was the goal. They got there, they're done. Right. So yeah, I got them to black belt. I did a job. I did my job well and I got them there. But most of them never trained again in their lives. They quit. They don't remember any of their techniques. They're older now. I was a black belt when I was a kid, they say, but they don't really have the skills, but at least we got them there.
Right. Right. That makes sense.
That's the hard part. You can't want it more than they want it for themselves.
That's true.
And then here's one other thing too. There's got to be a bell curve. So like, think about the bell curve. It starts on the far low left at the bottom, right? And then it goes all the way up to the top really high on the right. The bell curve at the very bottom for black belt in your school should be where you could put with you knowing that you promoted that guy on the lowest level on the left side to black belt, that your bell curve was satisfactory to you, right? So that even at the lowest level, they're not the most talented, they're not the most athletic, but they still made it through. You got to be happy with that low level of the left-handed side of the bell curve, right? Then it'll go up all the way to the top on the right. And that level on the right is going to be where they, where they're outstanding, where they're amazing, right? But there's going to be a bell curve where you could say, at least if they got to black belt, they're at that level of the lowest part, but still the lowest part is much better than most other spots.
True. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Right. So you got to be able to put your head on the pillow at night being satisfied. You don't want to go to bed knowing that you promoted someone that was terrible.
Right.
Like this guy right here that just made a comment is one of my best buddies, Anthony Arango from the Martial Art Institute. It's hard to be hard on most students because parents have very little commitment. Now, Sensei Arango runs one of the most prolific, most amazing schools in Long Island. He's been open for 45 years.
Wow.
I just hung out with him yesterday. He has one guy who was at our awards banquet. His name is Darren, and he's been with him for 42 years.
Wow.
I know the guy too for like 40 years because I know Sensei for a long, long time.
Wow.
And, his people are committed. Like I went to a black belt test where his son Antonio got his black belt, and he had people there that ranged anywhere from like 10 years to like 40 years in his school, like black belts that have been with him forever. And every single one of them pays tuition. No one gets a free ride. Some of them teach and they barter, but the majority of them are dedicated to his school, dedicated to him as a teacher. And he's a phenomenal martial artist, and his students are amazing. So he's really, really got it. He'd be a great guy to interview one day on your podcast.
All right. Anthony, hit me up, Anthony.
I'll connect you with him. He's just great.
That's awesome. But yeah, that makes total sense to think of it that way. Because sometimes I feel like I always think in my head as an instructor, like, obviously, like, what am I doing wrong? Why aren't they motivated to obtain that goal? Like, so I always think like I'm doing something wrong. I'm doing something wrong. But I guess it's that saying, you lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink, right?
Right.
So
well, I have a saying that adds to that. So you can lead a horse to water. Sometimes you can make him drink if he's thirsty enough, but you're never going to make that horse fly no matter how much you want him to do it. Right.
True.
Like, so that's where we want more for that student than they sometimes want for themselves. We want more for that child or that adult or that teenager than their parents will want for them. So that's why parents are so easy to let them quit and go, I'm not going to force them. And they regret it. Trust me. I know so many people have come to me over the last 34 years or 33, whatever, 34 years now. And they've come to me and said, I really wish I never quit. I wish my parents didn't let me quit. And I'll say, hey, listen, Marcus, you tortured your mom. I watched you do it. You cried in the car. I'd have to drag you out of the car. You made it living, and your mom was a single mom. You made her life a living hell. And they would say, like, you know what? But she was the parent. I was a kid. I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And they're right. But, sometimes people, like, they don't have the will to do it. Right. You know what I mean? Like, they work a full-time job. They're a single mom. They're driving multiple kids. It's like, go ahead. You want to be a loser? Go ahead. Work in a gas station and, or you're going to be a serial killer. Like, if you don't want to listen anymore, you know what I mean? Like, they're going to give up there. And I don't blame them at times. I know how tough it could be.
Yeah. No, I agree. What's the best part for you being a martial arts instructor? What's the best part?
That's a good question. I often think about, at the age that I'm at now, of when I'm going to retire. Like, what am I going to do? And what does retirement look like for me? Is it like going to my house down in Florida and joining a gym membership and just hanging out with my wife, go to the beach, or is it probably would be me going to Florida and doing those things, but finding a local dojo and teaching a day or two a week or every once in a while, or doing some seminars. But I think I'm blessed. We're all blessed as martial artists, right? Like, especially me, and you run multiple businesses as well, but I'm able to I've been doing this forever, like running a dojo, making my own hours, my schedule, my money, whatever I want to do. It's all me. Like, I do it all. So I can take off when I want. I can take a break if I need. But I think the best part is still, like, even tonight, I was inspired. I had 2 students tonight, adults, that for some reason they haven't gotten promoted. We have to earn our white belt. And then they go to yellow. That's usually like 8 months, right? They've already been with me for like 16 months and they're still white belts. Haven't asked once, not a complaint. They just train. So I said to my guy, Ryan, I'm like, Ryan, let's get some yellow belts and make up certificates real quick. I'm going to give them their belts tonight. He's like, oh, great. That's a good idea. That saves him a lot of time. He doesn't have to set up a promotion and go through the specials, times and all. So I'm like, yeah. And I said to the guys, I'm like, dude, you guys are the exact students that I want, where you don't ask for a new belt. You don't care. You train. You're happy. You're not motivated only because you're getting the new technique or a new belt or whatever. I'm like, you're more like the old school students that just trained for the reason of training, that nothing other than I want to train and be great. Right. So we promoted him to yellow belt tonight, so that was pretty cool to see them. Then, like little kids, their smiles are from ear to ear. They're super proud of themselves. And that's what keeps me going.
Yeah.
Like, I love being a teacher. I love coming up with new concepts and new lessons and new ways to motivate students. Like, I love coming up with additions to the curriculum or changing things so that I could get people to learn. I also love learning in general. Like, I do a lot of micro learning all day long. I'm on my 3 monitors right here. I have 1, 2, 3. And I'll have one video on learning. Like, I'm listening to Phil Voss. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He was an FBI hostage negotiator. He wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. And it's all about, like, negotiation. And I'm watching his videos, and everything he's talking about from the corporate world or from the hostage negotiation world, I'm going, that's great for the dojo. Like, and I'm writing notes and I'm like putting it into a leadership lesson and I'm using it in class. And I'm like, that's what I love doing. Like, I've been really blessed and lucky. Like, I look back on my life and I go, like, man, how lucky am I that I'm able to do this and not be in a cubicle, not working for a boss, not being told what to do, like just wake up. If I wake up early, I get up early. If I wake up late, I get up late. If I want to watch a little TV before I start my day, my wife makes me tea and I watch a little TV. Like that kind of lifestyle is what I've always aspired to have, like being in full control of my life. And that's why, and I'm honored that I'm able to do that through the students and the dojo and all that.
That's cool. Do you feel that you ever got the chance to teach? And this is gonna lead into something. Um, you ever felt that you got a chance to teach everything you know in the martial arts to one student or several students? Because I feel like I have so much to give,
Yeah.
but I haven't reached a point where I have the student yet that really wants it all.
Yeah, I agree. I'm the same way. Like sometimes I look at my students, I'm going like, why are they not as hungry as I was?
Right.
Like I have a notebook from my notes with Tanimoto Sensei, right? And we would go out to dinner, him and I. Like at one point we were really close and I would go there and it would just be him and I, and he would take me to dinner and take me to Nico Forest or take me to Asakusa and the different, shops and temples. And we'd spend one-on-one time for like 14 days, 20 days. And he would often write on napkins and he'd write down the lineage and the name of the systems. And he would, after he was done, he'd crumble it up and throw it for the waitress to take. And I would secretly reach over, grab that napkin and unfold it and fold it up and put it in my pocket. And I have like tons of napkins in my notebook of all the different knowledge that he's given me. But with me and I don't think there's anyone in my lifetime that I could teach what I've done, even if they're with me for as long as I've been, as long as they've been around that I've been running a dojo, because they're not around me, mirroring me 24/7, 7 days a week. And I'm always growing and learning and coming up with new concepts. So I try to share as much as I can. Sometimes I get frustrated because some of the students don't take the message. They don't listen to the lesson. They don't hear it. They don't understand it. They don't follow up on it. And I'm just like at that point now, like I can only give what I could give and people will get and take what they take. And that's it.
Like I remember, my first when my first ninjutsu teacher, you know who he is.
Yeah.
I would constantly, first I would ask him like, hey, can I show up at the dojo early?
Yeah.
Right? Oh yeah, of course. Right. We would sit in his office. Right. And I would answer, I would ask question after question after question. Most of our training was done in the office. Right.
Yeah.
The mat part, the kicking and punching part was very minimal, minimal compared to the office part. Right. And I would write down these notes and I would come back, do my research, but sometimes he was slick. Sometimes he would answer my question with a question, to make me look deeper.
Right.
I'd come home, do my research. I'd be like, oh wow, I found this.
Yeah.
Go back the next day. Sensei, I found this. What about this? Oh, you're on the right path.
Right.
Look at this, and I don't get that from any of my students,
Yeah, it's like, hard, right? Because you're special. You're like one of the, what's that old saying? The black belt saying, 10,000 students to get one legitimate black belt, 1 in 10,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
You're that 1 in 10,000. You're like that special person that really wants to learn and you wanted to keep on learning. And then you would research. You have not many people are like that anymore. Right.
Yeah.
They're not like that. They're not, that's not the way they're built. They don't really care that deeply. You'll find 1 or 2 in your lifetime that are going to be just like you were, but it's not like, I wish there was technologies, which I've learned them all or learned a lot, and that I could do better at being a better teacher to motivate, which I have, and inspire more, which I have. Than I did when I first started, right? As teachers, we're reaching way more people than we ever did. But will we have those people that were like us, maybe 1 or 2 in our lifetime? Because that's how we were. We were the 1 or 2 in our teacher's lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully, and don't get me wrong, I have great students,
Yeah.
but I feel like I have so much to give and
Yeah.
I'm running out of time. I'm gonna be 40 soon,
Right.
you
Right.
know.
You got a
So
lot of time left.
so I always joke around. I always say I'm gonna have a heart attack by
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Me too.
50. But um, I feel like I have a lot to give and very little time to do it because
Right.
time is going by so fast.
Yeah.
I remember yesterday being like 10.
Yeah.
You know what I
No,
mean?
I know. Like I remember looking back at my daughter when she was born, and now she's 25. So
Wow.
it's like I look at that time that has gone. Like Sensei Arango, who was just on. I mean, we know each other forever, like forever. Like it's been for we used to compete in tournaments, and I've watched him compete. I watched his students. When I was a young single guy, he had a lot of good looking girl students in his school. That I was always like, "Hey, is that girl single?" She's way too young for you, like that kind of thing. I'm like, oh, too bad. But like, yeah, he was him and I have been friends forever. Like, we know each other for so long. And it's interesting. It's like how quick time goes by. And we're
Yeah.
still doing it, right? 40 years
Yeah.
later. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. It really is. I mean, the martial arts is not quite like what it used to be. Traditional martial arts, especially because people don't put the time and effort into wanting to learn traditional martial arts. They don't want to learn the spiritual side, the mental, the physical. Like they only want to dabble. They
Yeah.
want to learn little things here and there. And it just takes a lot to inspire them. So we do our best. That's all we
Well,
could do.
well, it's like, and this could be it. Like I said, I say this could be my fault. It definitely is my fault. But you know what irks me the most? When I ask a black belt a simple question about
Yeah,
what we do,
right,
right? Like, like, it could be as like, oh, what does gyokuryu mean,
right.
right? And they look at me like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm like, how do you
yeah,
not know? Like,
yeah.
we
No,
went over this during your black belt test.
yep, I
Like,
get it.
like,
Some people, like I run into people all the time that say, "Oh yeah, I trained for 20 years. I was a third-degree black belt." I'm like, "Who's your teacher?" Joe somebody. I don't know. Like 20 years you're with Joe somebody, like you don't know what Joe somebody did. And like
yeah,
what style? I think it was jujitsu, maybe not, maybe taekwondo.
yeah,
I don't know. Like really, like did you really were you that on the surface? Or did you not remember, or you just forgot it all? But I have that all the time with me. Like I'll say, to people, "Hey, black belt, teach the white belt kata." "Oh, I forgot it." So then I say to them, I'm like, well, that's the reason why, we practice so
yeah,
that you got to improve yourself to remember it all. I said, and by the way, and you could attest to this, is that the best way to become a great martial artist is to become a teacher because it forces you to remember your material and constantly
yes,
repetitively regurgitating and reiterating those techniques over and over and over and over again.
yeah,
Right. And that's what makes you really good. So I do believe that if you want to be great, don't just teach though, because some people just teach and they don't train.
right.
You got to train and teach. You will become amazing if you could do that. And as long as you're training legitimately.
Yeah, some of
Right?
my best students are also instructors, but
Yep.
not because, they weren't like, oh, the best students and I made them instructors. Just,
Right.
they became instructors and like you said, they become better martial artists. Yeah.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
definitely is like part of the process.
Yeah. Um, before I um end this, I definitely had one more question I
Sure.
wanted to get to. Um, is tell me more about your tournaments.
Okay.
So why do you do them? So I know you do an internal tournament
Yes.
and you also do
And
the
open
New York, yeah, the New York tournaments.
tournament circuit. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
tell me about those.
I have always been a competitor. So I've always competed with my teacher Shion Vasquez, and even before that with my other teachers. So I love the competition environment. And just like anything else, I believe that competing is another element to your training, right? This is Sensei Frank Joseph. I know him for years and years and years and years. He's also another martial art friend of mine. that just popped up on the podcast. But so yeah, the tournament circuit to me is well, first of all, let me just say tournaments to me is just another way to challenge yourself. It's not,
Mhm.
I have so many people that go, oh no, I'm just not interested. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, because you're afraid. Well, no, I'm not afraid. I just don't really want to do it. I'm because you're afraid, right? You're nervous. You're not sure. You're unsure of yourself.
Right.
Well, I've done it before. I don't want to do it regularly. That's because you're nervous, afraid, and unsure of yourself, right? Like that's always the
Yeah.
reason,
Yeah.
right? But for example, in my school, we have a demo team, and they're kids from like 9 years old on up to adults in their 30s, late 30s. And they compete 6 tournaments a year. They practice to do demonstrations and so on. They're some of my best students because they're putting in the extra time and effort, not only in the dojo, but also at demo practice and also at tournaments competing. So they're bound to get better because you're putting the time in, right?
Yeah.
So I have an inter-school tournament that's sort of just between, it's just an in-school tournament, I should say. And that's just a way for people to compete where they're not afraid to be against people they never met before. They get to compete against each other, people they know, but it's not the same as just competing in class. So it gives it like that next level of training.
Right.
Then we have an open tournament circuit where it's open to anyone. Like, in fact, we had like 10 or 12 people that came from Canada last night to our awards banquet. They've been competing in our circuit all year long. We have people from all different states coming down and, Jersey, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Long Island, New York, and so on. And they compete. And it's a circuit that we host 6 tournaments a year. And it's really great. You should come one year just to check out a tournament.
No, yeah, I definitely want to bring my school. Yeah, for
I'd
sure.
love to have you. Yeah, we do a
Yeah.
self-defense division where they could practice, 3 or 5 self-defense techniques and perform them. They do weapons kata, fighting, regular forms and so on. So it's just a great venue. We really love it. I've been running my tournament for 32 years, the one that I started.
Wow.
Called the Long Island Open Karate Championship. But our tournament circuit, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary for our awards banquet.
That's awesome.
That's it's a tournament league that they get points and then they win at the end of the year. All the winners come together and we have this big dinner. That's what we did yesterday. And it was just great. Yeah, we had 450 people in attendance, probably about 190 competitors.
Wow.
That won awards.
That's amazing. So the reason I asked that is I had my first internal tournament.
Yes.
This past year, and it was basically what you said. At first, we couldn't get anybody to sign up for it,
Right.
Because we're not a tournament school. So a lot of people, I think, were unsure, didn't know what to expect.
Right.
We're probably afraid to lose. I'm sure.
Right.
Or get embarrassed.
Yeah.
We had I think it was 30 people, 30 participants for our first year, which was pretty decent.
Yeah.
And you know what everybody said? That was amazing.
Yeah.
When are you doing another one?
Right. Well, that's the thing. So here's a little coaching for you. So what you have to do is take those people and have them motivate another 30 people.
Yep.
And then you have to keep on doing it. And then you have to motivate more and more people to come to each tournament. And you eventually will build it up to the point where you'll have 150, 200 competitors. I remember I did an inter-school tournament when I had multiple schools. And my biggest inter-school tournament, we had 700 competitors.
Wow.
700. It was insane. But it was just so cool. But one thing I used to do back in the day is I would make it mandatory that they had to go to one tournament a year if they wanted to be promoted.
I'm going to definitely do that. So I'm going to do, I think I'm going to start off small. I'm going to say you need to come to at least one tournament to get your black belt.
Right.
Because in my opinion, the tournament is not about, the award or whatever. That's great.
Right. Yeah.
But the tournament's more about assessing skill.
Yeah.
The experience. And the experience to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
And figuring your way out of it.
Right.
Because as you know, a real life fight or life and death situation, it's kind of like that. You kind of don't have a choice.
Right.
You can't say to the guy mugging you, hold on, time out.
Yeah. I'll come back in 3 months when I learn how to take,
Exactly. Exactly. Or like, let's say you're at a job and your boss gives you a project. You can't tell them like, hey, I'm uncomfortable with this.
Right.
I don't want to do this. Well,
Yeah.
they're gonna be like, well, you're fired.
Right, exactly.
You
Well,
know?
that's the thing these days where I find that a lot of parents don't push past that uncomfortableness, right? Like that unsure attitude. And they as parents, they probably never did it themselves, right?
Right.
So, it's hard. So yeah, I think that we have to sometimes force our students to be pressure tested and make sure that they're doing things that they're uncomfortable with and that they get involved and they become a part of. And sometimes people don't realize that, like, they don't realize the value in it. Like, I
Right.
once had one of my black belt women, her entire family became black belts. Her name was Maria. She was my program manager. And she would always say, no, I've been there, done that. I'm not doing it. I'm like, Maria, you have to. No, I don't have. I've been doing it for, and I would make her do it. And inevitably after the tournament, she'd brag about, I did really good. Did you see my technique? And I'm like, I thought you been there, done that. She goes, oh, just leave me alone. Like, because I had to push her, even as a 35-year-old, 40-year-old woman, I had to push her past her comfort zone.
Right.
Right. And then, they always say about a comfort zone, if you drew a circle on a piece of paper, some people they stick their foot out for a half a second and jump right back into their comfort zone. So that's why we try to get them to stand outside their comfort zone long enough so that their comfort zone expands to a bigger area. Right. And I think
Right.
that's so important. What did Sensei Rango? Every sport practices. Then they compete against the other teams. Tournaments are our game, giving purpose to our training. He's so right.
True.
Yeah, we have that all the time. I say that to my people. I say, listen, we go to the practices every day. You just never go to the games.
Yeah.
I said, but if you're on the baseball team, that would be like you practiced all week with your team. You didn't show up to the games. They played the game without you, and then you went back to practice. Eventually, they're going to say you can't be on the team.
Right.
Right. So, and by the way, we only, Sensei Wrangler as well, he's got a lot of students. And a certain portion of them are probably like my students that just disappear into the background, right? Although he brings, like, at the dinner last night, he had like 70 people got awards and guests at the dinner.
Wow.
So like, he has a lot, and his competitors, 40 or 50 of them that compete all year round, are always in the top 7 spots.
That's
like
great.
His people are really good. So, but he's right. Like, what is it? It doesn't make any sense to go to the practices and not go to the games.
Exactly. Before we sign off, what's one piece of advice you could give to a student or a parent about martial arts?
Okay, I think it would be 2 pieces of advice, because one would be for the parents, one would be for a student, right? So for a student, the best piece of advice would be might be twofold. Number one is don't get caught up in the belts and learning new stuff. Care more about being great at what you do versus having a bright shiny object around your waist to say, I'm a so-and-so belt. Care about it. Like in Sensei Rango, who was just on, we always used to laugh. We'd watch people perform, and then him and I would look at each other and smile and go, but could he fight? Like, yeah, they did a great kata. They did a great, but could he really fight? Like in a real world scenario. So I think that that's important, that the students themselves don't get caught up in technique, like learning their next Q level or learning their next belt level or whatever it is, right? Just train and learn, but train and remember and become really great at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the other thing for parents, I think, is to, like you said before, is to try to carve out some time to be more involved in that child's martial arts training. In other words, if your kid was a baseball fanatic, you as a parent might love baseball, so you'll watch it on TV with them. You'll maybe take them to a professional teams game like the New York Yankees or Mets or something like that and go to the game. You may have a catch with them in the yard. You'll bring them to the practices. You'll buy them the hats and the yearbooks and the jackets with their favorite team on it. In the dojo, they sign them up, sign the contract or pay the payment, and then they feel like they're going to check out. And the reason why they do that is because they don't have experience on how to help their kids.
Right.
So I think that that's important. And by the way, I haven't done this in a while, but I used to do kick pad seminars for the parents, and they pay like $30 or something like that, and they get the hand knit kick pads. And then we would teach them like 22 drills on how to drill their kids at home. So rather than saying, hey, Johnny, rather than go, text me on the side, I'll show you my flyers and the whole setup. Rather than going outside and having a catch with their kid, they're like, hey, let's grab the pads. Let's work on your 1-2 combination roundhouse kick or whatever. And the parents have a list of 20 drills that they could go through on paper. Okay, because they'll forget because they're not doing it regularly, and they go like, this is it. Yeah, this is a great thing. Sensei Rango told me this the other day. VIPs are very involved parents. Right.
That's
and we got to get them. The more they're involved, the more that they're a part of, the more that they support the kids in the martial art journey, the better they're going to be, the kid as a student. And the more the parents going to keep them in the arts when the kids get demotivated. Right. No way, buddy. You're going to keep on going. This is really good for you.
And the more the kid gets out of it too, the more, Absolutely. The more the kid feels like, hey, like I have a purpose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, doing this.
Even though that my daughter doesn't train as much as I would like her to now, because she has a full-time job and a boyfriend and blah, blah, blah. She still will come to every tournament with me, help me set up. She'll judge the following day in all the tournaments all day long. She's a part of things. We laugh and joke about stories in the dojo. Like, I got to tell you something that happened today, like one of those things, and we're still connected in that regard, because to her, I think the martial arts is still a part of her life.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. That is great advice.
Yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed it. I was watching the numbers going up and down on the live, 7 people, 10 people, 12 people. So it really all depends, but I think that it's pretty awesome to be on the podcast. I appreciate you doing it.
No, thank you for jumping on, and you're always a great guest.
Thank you.
It's funny, I always have like questions to ask you.
Yeah.
But you communicate so well that I don't get to ask all the questions because we're just bouncing ideas back and forth. So it's literally just like you and me talking on the phone.
I love it. My mom used to say, like, she'd always laugh before she passed away. She'd always say things like, you have the gift of gab. You could talk. And she goes, one day she said to me a long time ago, she goes, you'll make a living out of talking, I think. So like, and she's right. I teach, I talk, I train people, I talk, I was a musician, I sang, it's all part of learning how to communicate. And that's part of life.
Maybe you can teach some public speaking classes.
Yeah. Well, I do in my leadership team.
Oh, perfect.
We have a whole entire lesson on whole entire month-and-a-half lesson on public speaking.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Cool, man.
All right, well, thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. See everybody. Until next time.
All right. Have a great night. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.